The wind turbine of fortune. Let's see what our first topic is going to be. Basically going to be whatever I stop. 100% renewable. Can we do it? Welcome back to episode 2 of The Road to Sustainability. Okay, so big topic. Maybe I've bitten off a little bit more than I can chew for a second episode, but we'll see how we go. 100% renewable. Where on earth do you start thinking about how you achieve 100% renewable Australia? Pretty difficult task. Anyway, I started thinking, what does 100% renewable Australia look like physically? And I couldn't kind of get this idea out of my head that it was just, a whole bunch of massive PV arrays and just like millions of wind turbines. And the reality is I'm probably not too far from being correct in saying that. Why can't we just cover the globe with solar panels and transfer the power from one side of the world to the other side of the world? So whatever side of the world has got the sun shining on it, transfer that power all the way over to us, or all the way over to the US. And we're all powered by 100% renewable. I mean, it would be great. But then I kind of started thinking about the political implications and the arguments that would happen between countries about trying to make something like that happen. It's just not going to happen. 100% renewable Australia is a possibility, and it's something that's probably going to happen eventually. Well, I hope so. I mean, it would be stupid for us not to. And here's why. Well, let's go back a bit. I used to work in one of Australia's longest running solar companies. And anyway, we're at the Sustainable Living Festival one day, and we were doing our thing, and across the road from us was this company called Beyond Zero Emissions. And they were promoting this book. This is back in 2010. And I got a copy of the book. Here it is. Zero Carbon Australia. It's a roadmap for a 100% renewable Australia. So the work's already done, really. This book details one of the possible methods of transitioning Australia into a 100% renewable energy system. And I don't mean one where we're filling up the whole world with PV systems and transferring power. I mean, that's obviously just not feasible. But this book talks about getting to 100% within 10 years. Now, this was done in 2010, and we're heading into 2020. I mean, it's 2018 now, obviously. But so I decided to have a read through this and catch up with some of the contributors or some of the researchers and the authors of this book. So after reading through this book a little bit, it talks about having a national electricity grid, various supplies of renewable energies, and a capacity to support a more than equivalent demand network. The basis of this report was to use wind and solar thermal with a salt storage system to provide 24-hour continuous power, along with utilising biomass and hydro providing the supportive power, in conjunction with upgrading our electricity grid and connecting it all together with high voltage AC and DC transmission lines. This plan, however, does talk about reducing or minimising peak demand. Now, that's understandable, but it means that there's a lot more to this than I initially thought, and it has introduced the concept of using battery systems in order to store our energy. I decided to ask one of the project researchers, Mr. Richard Keach, how the project was going and whether any of it had actually been undertaken yet. To which he replied, the most notable one being Port Augusta, where the plans for a solar thermal generator dubbed Aurora were underway. Now, Aurora is a 150 megawatt solar thermal tower with salt storage capacity and due for construction this month. So we're obviously making some progress towards it. I found another piece of information from the ATA, the Alternative Technology Association, which asked exactly the same question that I am asking. 100% renewable Australia. Is it feasible? This document was released last year, November 2017, so it's a fair bit more current than the BZE copy. It talks about ramping up Australia's renewable energy source adoption rate by 80%. And as the old coal-fired power generators come offline over the years, renewable energy systems will come in place, and making 100% renewable energy sources available by 2030. It talks about using pumped hydro as massive storage systems, along with new batteries being installed like the Tesla job in South Australia, along with Aurora, the solar thermal generator. You see, I think there's this massive push for energy storage systems now. We understand that 100% renewable energy system isn't going to be able to produce power at all times. This concept of baseload is kind of broken apart. I think there's a big emphasis on storage now because a 100% renewable grid isn't going to be operating at all times. Like solar, obviously the sun doesn't shine all the time. The wind also doesn't blow all the time, and a hydro system can't pump all of its water because then there won't be any supply left. And for those of you who don't understand how a pumped hydro system works, it's where renewable energy sources provide excess power, the water gets pumped back up from one section of the dam to another section of the dam to reset its ability to generate electricity. Which seems like a really good idea considering that over the years we've been producing much more electricity than we're actually consuming. So these energy systems need to work together to create a stable supply of electricity. And so the use of an energy storage system allows us to capture the energy that's been produced, store it for use later on. The best way that I could think of describing it as would be a giant standalone power system where we're using hydro systems as the battery storage, but without the limitations of localized weather conditions. And this is exactly one of the reasons for a more connected electricity grid, so we can transfer the power from where it's being produced to where it's being used. In another document I found, they called it the transmission backbone, connecting far north Queensland to Sydney, down to Melbourne, over to Port Augusta, and an interconnecting exchange between Tasmania and approximately Traralgon. So now we've kind of got an idea of what a 100% renewable Australia might look like. But it started leading me to think about the intermittent generation ability of renewable energy systems, which they accounted for by having to nearly double the grid's current capacity of 48,000 megawatts to 93,000 megawatts, comprised of 45,000 megawatts of wind farm, made up of 15,000 3-megawatt turbines, 23,000 megawatts of solar farms, approximately 70 million panels, 17,000 megawatts of rooftop solar, existing hydro and biomass sources, 10,800 megawatts, along with pumped hydro systems, allowing storage capacity of 490,000 megawatt hours, along with 16,000 megawatts of generating capacity. And the best thing is, there's hundreds of suitable locations for all of this to happen. See, I wasn't too far off. So this paper led me to another paper created by the Australian National University, released in February 2017, stating that by 2030, 1/3 of the coal-fired power stations in Australia would be reaching 40 years old and needing generator replacement. And it seemed unlikely to occur due to public opposition and risk-adverse financiers. It also states that their modelling is based on the national electricity market, which serves around 19 million people in Australia, but does exclude the smaller grids in Northern Territory and Western Australia. It states that there appears to be minimal increase in demand in the residential sector, but attributed this to the growing number of rooftop PV systems being installed. So what does all this mean? Well, in broad terms, it means I have a lot more research that I need to conduct. But indeed, there was modelling already for Australia's 100% renewable grid. Now, a lot of these papers that I read all had references to this thing called AEMO, which is the Australian Energy Market Operator. And it plays a vital role in this move to 100% renewable. And I'll do another video on AEMO later on. And I also thought about what other countries or nations are already 100% renewable. And if you do a quick Google search and have a look at Wikipedia, you'll find very quickly that there's at least 30 nations operating on 90% plus renewable energy. So it's not like it's unachievable at all, but there are a number of factors which are going to play a part in whether this actually happens. And some of the key barriers that we have towards reaching this 100% renewable goal are climate change deniers, which, whichever side of the fence you're on, it probably doesn't really even matter anymore, because using renewable energies is going to be cheaper. It has to be. I decided to do my own modelling.